Well, hey, everybody. Before we begin, we acknowledge that we are gathered on the traditional and unceded territory of the Lummi, Nooksack, Samish, and Semiahmoo people who have cared for and tended this land since time immemorial. Truth and acknowledgement are critical to building mutual respect and connection across all barriers of heritage and difference. We begin this effort to acknowledge what has been buried by honoring the true. We pay respect to their elders, past and present. Please take a moment to consider the many legacies of violence, displacement, migration, and settlement that brings us together here today. And please join us in uncovering such truths at any and all public events. Welcome, everybody, to our February steering committee meeting. Any questions? Has everybody looked at the agenda? It looks like it's mostly about planning for IPTRF meetings. But before we get to that, we're going to have Peter, had you contacted the subcommittee chairs for this item? It says committee chairs to report out on their action plans.
No, I wanted to get I wanted to hear from them in this meeting when they would, what kind of progress they're having, any updates, any help that they need, and so that we can figure out when to incorporate their work in, the March or April meeting of the IPRTF.
So I guess we'll open it up to our subcommittee co-chairs. And do you have anything that you have to offer on the kind of your action plan for this year?
I'm just going to start because I think I'm one of the chairs here.
Yep.
And I think we had a pretty good discussion yesterday, actually, at our meeting. It was helpful. Bertie was there. And I'm trying to find my thing here, but we did talk about some of the stuff that we would need for data on the index committee, and Stephen was there. We kind of talked about some of the joint items, and I think putting it out there and giving the members some time to look at it, see what is actually doable, and how we can move forward on some of that is beneficial. Also, having Dr. I think it was McHenry from Whatcom Community College come in and talk about his externship program, that they have, I think, 800 hours that they have to complete, and maybe being able to try to utilize them to assist in pulling some of that data for, I'm trying to remember the name, but I'm sure Bertie has it, of the company Village, the consultants.
Oh, Village Reach
Consultants. And then I was talking to Stephanie after the meeting, because she was at another meeting. We tag team, we try to communicate on the meetings that we can't both be at the same time, but she was telling me that she had provided Kayla with some information on a dashboard that is being used currently in Thurston County, that is basically taking some of the information that we're looking for, that might be beneficial. Out of our meeting from yesterday, we were discussing how we could streamline some of the processes with Eric Ritchie and Maya Vanyo, and we have already set up a meeting to discuss that with the criminal justice team on the 25th of this month. So I think as long as we keep trying to narrow down, hey, this is what we can actually do right now, and this is what we need to push out, and then probably have another discussion with the Legal and Justice Committee. The next one is the Joint Committee, but the following after that, to say, okay, here's what we came up with. I've provided a copy of the paperwork that Bertie provided us for the meeting that was yesterday. to Jake Weebush, who wasn't able to make it. I asked him to circulate that because he was at the clerk's luncheon for the municipalities yesterday. I said, can you circulate this with all of the administrators, with all the municipal courts, to see what they can contribute to this list, and then circle back. So we might be able to have a more robust conversation about that at it would be the April meeting from Legal and Justice, and then report back on where we think what we can do to move forward on some of those items. So anyways, that's
So
what I
it
got.
sounds like May, you would be ready to present something to IPRTF.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Bertie?
So Bertie, this is in context of our subcommittee action plans. And so, yeah, I was going to call on you to kind of reflect on that meeting that Raylene's talking about.
Bertie,
Yeah,
you're muted.
That helps. Would you rather have me wait, Barry, until you were?
No, I think this is perfect timing because Raylene was talking about the meeting that you guys were in, and that might
Yeah.
be good for you to give your take on it as well.
Yeah, well, I agree. It was a great discussion, and I just want to weigh in a little bit because it overlaps with the work that the index committee is starting to do. So after the discussion yesterday, I haven't had a chance to connect with you, Raylene, but the index committee has agreed to, it has a work group that's going to inventory what's available. And we're waiting for Julia Garrett from Village Reach, who is going to post a document on a Microsoft platform, and then we can fill it in. And I have the list from our discussion yesterday and want to make sure all those areas are covered. So there's things in the works, and that's all I'll say. But I think we can interface what Legal and Justice came up with yesterday with what the index committee is inventorying. And we're just kind of waiting on Julia Garrett at this point.
Thanks, Bertie.
Yeah.
Any questions or any comments on those kind of report outs from Index and Legal and Justice? If not, we'll go to maybe Stephen and Dan. Do you guys have anything you want to share from behavioral health?
Hey, Stephen, do you want to maybe recap the discussion from the other day when we met?
Sure. Dan and I canceled the January meeting of the Behavioral Health Subcommittee, and we've been working hard to frame out a process that probably will be the entirety of our agenda for the February meeting next week.
Stephen, we can barely hear you. Can you up your audio, please?
I will try. How's that? Any better?
A little better, thank you.
Okay. Sorry about that. So our approach is going to be a little directive, but basically we're going to be setting out a year's work, relying on sort of self-created work groups. I will note that of the task force's top 3 priorities, the only one that really touches on behavioral health is the reentry and diversion programs. And so that will be our primary work group. We also see that the project prioritizing data issues touches on us, of course, but it touches on everybody else as well. And I'm a little concerned that Stephanie and Kayla are having a conversation. Raylene's committee had a conversation. Index is having conversations. So I would rather see those of our membership interested in data joining in those conversations, trying to centralize this, because I think, as Bertie alluded to, there is overlap in all of those conversations. And that doesn't seem very efficient. So we're looking for a way to really move this forward, and that doesn't seem to be by having siloed conversations. In the same spirit, there have already been advances in reentry. I'll call it reentry preparation in jail-based services, thanks to Caleb and Hannah Sloan and Lifeline. But the real gist of reentry, in our view, exists in community-based services, that someone leaves the jail and is held and supported and receive services across a spectrum that can ensure successful reintegration in the community. So I think that's where our reentry focus will go, because that is sort of, by its nature, a lot of behavioral health and behavioral health support services. The diversion part of that priority really is triggered by the prosecutor's office and the court systems. Those are not in the purview of the Behavioral Health Committee, so I think we will sort of hold off on that and take some direction from whatever involvement we're able to get from the prosecutor's office, whatever the judicial officers choose to do in diversion services. And I also think and suggested to Raylene yesterday in Legal and Justice that might be a topic that we can address jointly in our quarterly meetings. So the form that will take, I don't know, but I think we are going to wait for outside direction on what we do with diversion services. So our primary emphasis, I think, will fall on reentry. And we'll try to fit in with diversion. We'll try to fit in with data. And then I know that we have a role to play in thinking about or participating in perhaps whatever work group gets named for the Behavioral Care Center, and even more so the programmatic side of what the Division Street campus conceptions and build out look like. So I think, you know, what we'll be able to report, it'll be sometime this spring, will be the finalization of that process, and the whatever work groups the committee memberships choose to form. And Dan and I think at this point are envisioning study groups to begin with, research, best practices, interviewing people with similar kinds of programs. We're going to deal with this, as Kayla has emphasized, at a policy level. We're going to suggest that there be X, Y, and Z components to a robust reentry program. I don't envision, I would discourage us from trying to pick winners and losers here and say this program you ought to do, but we will have characteristics of programs that we want to envision. But those will be coming later in the year. Dan, that was probably incomplete, so anything you want to add to that overview, feel free.
No, thanks. I think you did a great job of providing that perspective from the discussions that we've had. I would add to that just a couple of points real quick. I've met with two business owners from the trades to get their ideas about how to integrate folks for reentry and just ideas that they have. And I've got some kind of basic ground work on that. And I talked to Peter Frazier about Franklin County, Ohio, and the work that they have in terms of reentry. So I think there are some things that we can learn from them, but this is all kind of like, you know, 101 survey level stuff. So we're kind of in the beginnings of this process. And yeah, I just want to emphasize that. So reentry, Division Street data, those are the three kind of big buckets that we're looking at right now. And we've got a really good team. And so I look forward to, making 2025 happen in a way that's meaningful.
Yeah, go Sat Paul.
Yeah, I just wanted to share my experience when I was at BTC. We had several students in several programs who were currently in jail. There was a day permit given to them. And I think that was a great, of course, it was great because the jail was downtown, Valley BTC was downtown. I remember interacting with them in not one, several programs. Welding was very popular. And I think that we could do that, have a van, take people from Labaudy to BTC, and we have much better technology and monitoring now than what we had 20 years ago. And I think rather than taking space, duplicating, you still will not be able to have all the equipment for different trades. You may have one or two things. There could be, there used to be a 40-hour course. I forget the name. It was like getting ready to work, right? So that was a 40-hour course that was given. And there could be some snippets which people from BTC can come and like even their advisors, hey, these are the 5-10 opportunities for you to do while you are here for 6 months, and you can have 1, 2, 3 certificates. So I think that we should concentrate more on creating that opportunity than creating very expensive but duplicate. And then where are you going to find instructors? Carpentry guy cannot teach you welding. Welding guy cannot teach you to be a chef. So that becomes one space, multiple uses. We already have, and there is Whatcom Community College for computers, other techs. So I think we should think more about creating a place where they can go there, they are monitored, and they can do their day, and then they can be picked up. And another thing, Bellingham Tech classes are like high school. They start at 8:30 and end at 3:30. They're not like, oh, I don't have a class on Wednesday or this. They are pretty much like a school. So that I just wanted to share that. Thank you.
Thanks, Sat Paul.
Hey, Barry, can I follow up real quick to
Yeah, go ahead, Dan.
what the executive just said? So that came up today. So I met with a leading construction company here. I just got done with the meetings before this one here, and that came up. So utilizing community partners like BTC or Whatcom, and the thought was like it should not all fall to the private sector to come up with the solutions. That could we figure out like a public partnership when it comes to like local resources like BTC that does provide for trades training. So that's being talked about, and I just want to put that out there that we're thinking about that. And like I said, this is all very preliminary, and that's going to be a discussion that we're going to put in our work groups for the Behavioral Health Committee to be assessed and evaluated by the broader committee of awesome people that are great thinkers. But that thought of utilizing BTC and Whatcom that absolutely came up today. So I just wanted to put that out there. Thanks.
Well, that's great. I love that approach. I think that getting people skilled and into the workforce is a very super important part about reentry.
And they get out for the good behavior because they get rewarded because now they are actually following something.
Yeah. Stephen?
Barry, I just want to loop around Paul's comments and Dan's and just reiterate that I think the way we're thinking of our action plan and our recommendation production is on the level of saying we need a job training component in a successful reentry program. We need behavioral health and substance use treatment. We need intensive case management. We need navigators. We need peer support programs. And we may provide some examples of those either in the local community or that we find in other jurisdictions. But the ordinance gave the executive's office the responsibility to flesh out those policy recommendations. And so that's the level I think that we'll be working on, and Dan is doing a great job of drumming up a lot of those examples and connections, some in the private sector, some, as Paul quite correctly points out, could come from existing programs that we can expand and suggest a refocusing of. But we'll be functioning more at the component level of what we're saying we ought to have, not what we ought to have.
Well, that sounds great. You guys have really done a great job of recruitment and really building your committee out. I think it's really looking forward to that work. Anything else from committees? Do we have anything at all from the Ann Deacon subcommittee? Is there any report at all, Peter, that you know of?
We no longer have the crisis stabilization committee. In fact, it's one thing that I do want to talk about a little bit later in this meeting is getting a report on Ann Deacon and a follow-up from our meeting from last year. But what about J-pop? You guys,
Holly could maybe give us something on J-pop.
Yeah, sure. We have our action plan. It's done kind of in a calendar format. It's already been presented to the J-pop. So I think it's just a matter of kind of integrating it into, the whole, the whole picture here. So yeah, I feel like we're on track and it's feeling really good. And yeah, I'm so happy that we have we have our co-chairs here, Tasha and Hannah, and we have our protege, Richard. So I feel like we're in a really good shape. And I see Tasha.
Well, that's where I was going to go next, was have our co-chairs report out. So Tasha?
Next week in our meeting, we're going to have Village Reach there, and she's going to give an update on what she's compiled so far. I know that she has met with Birdie and the index committee and some of the suggestions that they have had. So I'm looking forward to that. It doesn't work out next week, but I talked to Holly and Marty a little bit about, I would love to do an in-person when we have something we really want to brainstorm, because I think it's much more effective when we're in a group together and then we just get to know each other more. So I know that we're kind of thinking maybe in April, we might try and plan a big in-person meeting.
Hannah?
Yeah, I think just kind of getting our feet under us and getting some organization and structure, and we're ready to go and start diving into some of these topics a little bit deeper.
Great. I know it's just a super enthusiastic group, and I think they're really, really eager to make a difference. So I'm really looking forward to being a part of that. All right. We will move to our next item, which is items for the February and upcoming task force agendas. The first one we are considering is the Behavioral Health Care Center development, which is a continuation from January's meeting. So I have some notes here that the chairs and I are supposed to talk about what we'd like to see in a presentation for that meeting. We haven't had that discussion yet. Peter, do you have any thoughts on that you've come up with for that?
I do, and I just want to. I see Raylene's hand is up, and just wanted to circle back to her before we move on.
Yeah, Raylene.
I just wanted to add on a side note, we have a new committee member on legal and justice, and many of you already know her. Wendy Jones has joined us, and she has also offered up assistance to the index committee on data stuff that she had compiled before she left the jail, and any new ideas. I think it would be beneficial to J-pop and the rest of us. So I just wanted to let y'all know that she's on board to help us as much as we need.
Good.
Yeah,
great.
thanks, Raylene.
Now, Barry, let's see. So I want to be sure I understand what it is that you're referring to. So we, at the last IPRTF meeting, in the packet was a proposal for proposal for an IPRTF work group to advance the use of the behavioral care center model in Whatcom County. I gave a little presentation on it. There was a motion attached for approval. Unfortunately, we did not have a quorum by the time this came up, and so we were not able to approve it. So
Well, maybe all we need to do then, Peter, is kind of
Yeah.
reintroduce the item at a introductory level and do the vote. Maybe that's all we have left.
Yeah, I think so. And Jill, I was going to suggest that Jill perhaps put it in the packet for our next meeting so that everybody gets a second chance to read it. And then we could, I don't think it'll take very long. I think we can have a quick discussion and then a vote.
Heather,
Does that sound good?
Heather, did you have anything on that particular agenda item that you wanted to have a focus on?
I fully support the agenda item. I want to make sure though, at one of the planning meetings, were we talking about facilities encompassing the behavioral care center? And Peter, can you help me remember? Will that
Yes.
become its own new proposal or, okay?
Yeah. In fact, that's something I'd like to bring up today. It's but it'd be a separate item. Yeah.
The one thing I'll add too, just for the record, is at one of the finance meetings, I brought forth the idea around if we're building the behavioral care center, should we be exploring the licensure needed to do involuntary treatment holds, knowing that, 60 to 70% of the people need some sort of treatment, but that's obviously controversial and needs quite community robust discussion and input, and but wanted to just say it for the record here too.
And I'd like to add that I think I brought this up, but Eric Ritchie is having his civil department look at the trove of documents that we have on hand from the BCC model from Nashville and other places, and they're going to look at how it would adapt to Washington state law and other factors. So I think they're working on that now, as I understand. So
that's great.
Yeah.
Okay. Now we have let's see, is there anything else here? Okay, we'll move on to Peter, your list that you kind of sent out.
Sure.
You have several bulleted items here. Maybe you could go over that.
Yeah, I have some suggestions for February's meeting, February and March's meeting, and actually one for April too. And I just wanted to talk through them, list them for everybody, and see how people are feeling about moving forward with these. So we've talked about the BCC work group vote. We now have a relaxation of booking restrictions, and at our jail, I reached out to Sheriff Tanksley to talk about to ask him whether he would be willing to present to us in the next IPRTF meeting about those changes, since they are a big part of the calculus that this body deals with, is obviously jail space. And I thought that a quick presentation and time for questions would be helpful. Is that something? Yes, Raylene, I see you've got your hand up.
I think if we're doing a presentation from Sheriff Kingsley on the booking restrictions, we also need to make sure there's time for the courts to weigh in, for public defense to weigh in. As we lift booking restrictions, I've already noticed on Monday that Superior Court first appearances didn't get started it was almost an hour late. More bookings means court goes longer, means staff have to stay later, means that attorneys might not have the opportunities to meet with their clients. If there's more defendants, it also causes more work and more time for hearings. So I think as we look at the impacts that it's having on the jail, we also want to make sure that there's enough time for the trickle down effect for others to comment on the impacts that it's having for everybody. So I just wanted to throw that in there, that there might be more feedback.
Yeah, so I guess we could have a robust discussion around it, and I think it would be helpful for IPRTF to host that. And so let's make sure that we have as much representation from the courts and public defenders, prosecutors, et cetera, there at that meeting to ask questions and express concerns and such. Tasha?
Excuse me, along those same lines, we're all worried about or discussing data, and this is the time we need to be collecting some data as far as recidivism rates. A lot of course, the warrants are not going to the original court dates. So if we're booking them and releasing them and reissuing new court dates, are they showing up for their new court dates or are they not? Okay, I see you, Raylene, with her head shakes and her head nods and stuff. But again, we don't have the data we're not grappling that data right now, but this would be the time that we should be really looking at that data, because this is specifically I don't know if we can come up with a survey quick, or nothing's ever quick, but like, okay, why didn't you show up for your secondary? Is it because of lack of services? Is it because you just didn't want to? Is it because you were using drugs? Like, what is the reason, so that we're grabbing all of that information to have it available as we build out our plan.
Great point. Hannah?
Those are great ideas, Tasha. I love it. I also wanted to add that would like to get our behavioral health staff's feedback on the booking restrictions being lifted. We've already noticed a significant increase in workload, and I don't know that our staff at its capacity is going to be able to do this long term, especially over the weekend. They had a lot of stuff come up, and 2 people was not enough to address all the needs. And so if this continues, it's going to be a really big struggle.
Well, it sounds like we're going to have an excellent discussion on at our next meeting. Tasha?
On the law enforcement side, I appreciate you, Hannah, but we're appreciating the fact that we get to book people again.
Okay, well, generally, everybody in favor of having this discussion in our next meeting?
One question. Peter, you said that you reached out to Sheriff Tanksley. Did you get a confirmation from him that he can, in fact, provide that?
He's actually going to be out of town, but he deputized Caleb Erickson, so to speak, to do the presentation. So
okay.
It sounded like he might be able to call in, but he was a little uncertain. He wanted Caleb to give the presentation, and Caleb and Steve Harris, I'm now recalling, he would like to have invited to this meeting. So Jill, if you could make sure that they get invited. I think they generally would love to have an invitation to the IPRTF meeting if they don't already. Stephen?
I have some hesitation bringing this up, but I wonder if part of our conversation would be to take note of and try to make collective decisions about what are being taken as siloed decisions when in fact the system isn't siloed. I love Sheriff Tank, and I'm glad he made that step, and yet he obviously did it without understanding the impact on the courts, on the behavioral health staff in the jail, And so all of, I mean, this is a balloon where you push on one side and it pops out on the other. So I know these are independent stakeholders in the process, but at the same time, their actions have effect on other parts of the process. And somehow we ought to be able to map out a way that we coordinate our intent to take steps like that before we actually take them and find out what the repercussions are. I'll just throw that out as a thought for how we conduct that discussion.
Very good. Okay. The next item is related, and I had heard that Bellingham Police Department was using the SCORE facility down in Des Moines, and I think it's in Des Moines. Anyway, I want to hear more about that, and I just have not been able to get a hold of Chief Mertzig, but I'd love for her to, as a IPRTF member, to also tell us about their use of SCORE and how the relaxation of booking restrictions interacted with those decisions. Raylene?
You may also want to reach out to Tammy Bennett with Bellingham Municipal Court. I know Darlene had a lot of positive things to say about SCORE, their programs, their mental health assistance and capacity to assist people before. And Tammy's the new administrator. I think she's been on some of the meetings already. So I think she's actually a member of the task force now. Jill can correct me if I'm wrong, but she might be able to give you some feedback.
That'd be great to get her participation. And maybe we can, we could advertise this, if you will, as an upcoming item and get everybody prepared. Jill?
Thanks. I was just wanting to question the timing on this. You say you have not heard back from Chief Mertzig. The agenda for the meeting will need to be finalized by end of day this week, Friday. And are you going to reach out to the chief again to try to involve her?
Yeah, we're playing phone tag over the last week, so somehow it'll happen. So yes, I will. Okay. The next item, if we had time for this in the February meeting, let's see, as some of you know, Heather and I and the planning team sent out an email to Kayla to propose convening a meeting of stakeholders and around a 23-hour the 23-hour facility work group to have a meeting with key informants and interested IPRTF members to strategize how to approach the questions that are now coming up, as we heard in our last IPRTF meeting, around funding of the not the capital project, but rather the programming there. And so we're suggesting this could begin as a single meeting and potentially evolve into a work group if necessary. So I have not heard back from Kayla about this, but it was something that she was hoping that we could help with, and I'd love to perhaps put together a proposal to for this meeting, an agenda and such. So I'm just waiting to hear back on that one.
So Peter, just so you know, for the February 24th meeting, I know there's several of us that will not be here. We'll be on a little road trip down to Seattle to see Link. I think Maya, you might be on that trip, right? I am. I know Melora's kind of organizing. Caleb is supposed to be on that trip, so you might want to double check with him.
Okay.
So
well,
there might be some duplicate scheduling going on out there. I just thought you might want to know that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Okay, all right. I'll check into that. Maybe you could send me an email with all the people who are going, and maybe this meeting. Well, it depends.
I'll send it to you as soon as we're done here.
Okay, great. Thank you. And then looking ahead to March meeting, as mentioned just earlier in this meeting, I would love to propose having an update on the Ann Deacon Center. As you may recall, we had a joint behavioral health, legal and justice meeting about a year ago on this topic, and we had representation from law enforcement and EMS and the providers there at the Ann Deacon Center, and from the health department. We had a robust discussion. It sounded like changes were in the works. Progress was going to be made. And it would be just great to have another discussion around this. And since we no longer have a monthly meeting of the Crisis Stabilization Committee because it's on hold, we're not getting the reporting that we used to be getting. So how do people feel about that as a subject matter for March? Let's see, one thumbs up at least. Okay. Another thing that I'd really like to suggest is that we inspire some progress on Project 13, continue to make changes in the court system. And this kind of came up because we're looking for somebody from courts to compile some reporting quarterly to help us to understand how each of these items are from the projects from the implementation plan are moving forward. And I don't believe that there really are key identified people who are leading Project 13 in the courts. And so I'm proposing to Heather and Barry that we perhaps have a series of meetings with folks in the courts and try to get some momentum going on this one. How would that sound to you? And maybe we could get things moving and get some people identified for reporting and reporting back to us on progress. Barry and Heather, does that sound like
I was just
something?
gonna say, I'm in, just
Yeah.
We'll get something scheduled and I'll definitely want to participate. So,
Okay, great. Bertie, you gotta have your hand up.
Yeah, I was just wondering if that is really the role of the legal and justice system meeting, and I think it's appropriate for you to have a separate meeting. That I'm not disagreeing with that, but isn't that in theory what that subcommittee is charged with, among other things?
Raylene, how do you feel about
She
Raylene, are
is,
you there?
it sort of stepped away. There you.
Oh,
I'm sorry. Can I pop out for just a couple minutes and come right back to you guys?
sure. Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah.
I think we should
my
hold this
thinking,
discussion till Ray. I saw that she had disappeared from her
Yeah.
computer screen, but
quite frankly, Bertie, my feeling is that at this juncture, we need a little bit of
yeah, a little
bit
fire under our.
Yes, exactly.
Yes, got
Yeah.
it.
And Barry and I were having a discussion earlier this week, I believe it was, or late last week, and we were talking about the power of meetings, small meetings, where you go
Right.
around and that's where a lot of good work happens, is those meetings. And in going from court to court, I think might really help us move forward a pace. So, and then the next item was for perhaps a March meeting was a discussion about Project 9, identify what additional facilities are needed to support people with behavioral health and substance use disorder issues at risk of incarceration. I put together something I'm calling a map. I included it, or Jill included it as an attachment to an email sent out today. I'd love to have people thinking about this. It was a direct ask from the executive's office that IPRTF do some good thinking and work around this project. And I'd really like to hear from people on their interest in this and whether they think this work group would make good sense being formed here in over the next few months. Any opinions on that? Stephen.
Send this directly to Peter. I'll voice it to the group. I think that project, that idea, preceded our realization for how intractable the operating cost factor seems to be becoming. And it seems to me like it's the cart before the horse to be thinking about what buildings are needed before we know what programs we've identified and how we will pay for operating them in those buildings. So I don't say you shouldn't have that conversation. I question whether it might be a little premature if you're starting it the next couple months. But I sure for one would like more clarity and more progress on the operating cost funding mechanisms. And I think there are a couple of possibilities, but none of them look like they're getting any traction. And all of that is outside our scope of control.
Thank you, Stephen. Heather?
I agree, Stephen, and can you hear me okay right now?
Yeah, we can hear you fine.
Okay. What I suggested to Peter was if we form this group, there should probably be a structured agenda of program as one section, programs, and then facilities, because they go hand in hand, as you know. And what I would really love is for this group to start from the question of, okay, what does the community need? What exists? Back to the drawing board, is this 23-hour crisis center what we need still? And go through the exercise of, if not that, who isn't being served, who still needs to be served, and get the right people at that table to have that conversation. Because I had a lot of questions when Kayla came to the task force about what are the working assumptions that it would cost $23 million a year, and where's the space to get those questions answered, and does it have to cost that much? If it's Melora's description of what that 23-hour center didn't sound like it should cost, it sounded like it was a kind of an umbrella for existing programs that already are funded. So that was my suggestion to Peter, is that how do we do it both at the same time?
Yeah, and I'm all for that. My interest is in planning for a full continuum of care in Whatcom County over the next number of years. And it's not just facilities, it's programs. And the work of the BGAT and the around the SIM was excellent work. We need to review that, and that would be a great place to begin and look for that. Look again at that gap analysis. Is that Paul?
Yeah, I want to share something with you, and we kind of all know about it, that it's a difficult thing, but I just want to come out and say it, that we always plan mile wide, 1 inch deep, because we make promises to ourselves that the example, no child left behind, or everybody will get every service. I think we should be cognizant of our resources. And to me, if we can do few less, but do a good job with them, we have accomplished our job. The seat I sit on, that's the tension, that I have. Take example of homelessness, take example of all other things we are trying to accomplish and do, and the investments we are making, right? And it's in the eyes of the providers or us community look at, and we assume this should be done for their benefit, which may or may not always be true. We should never forget that, because ultimately, I wish and desire that we take care of everybody. And we all know we cannot. And we should admit that as a body, as administrators, as public, as activists. We should all keep that in mind. Sorry, I feel more passionate about it because I am torn between different programs, different funds, and different things, and then listening. Why aren't you doing enough? I think that is something that we should always be aware of. Okay, I'll stop here. Thank you.
Tasha, oh, thank you, Senator Paul. And certainly that thinking needs to be when we're planning that financial realities and effectiveness of our strategy need to be taken into account. So I think that would be a large part of the discussion. Tasha.
Kind of piggybacking on what he was just kind of saying is that, I mean, we've created a lot and we've accomplished a lot now that we have these 15 points. And it's kind of like when you are like have an autoimmune disease and you take out everything and you start adding a little by little until you evaluate whether it's having the effect that you want. You shouldn't be adding too much, because then you really don't know what is truly working. Is it a combination, or is one failing but the other one's succeeding more than we expected? And so we keep funding both, even though one's not really doing what we wanted it to, but was covered up by the fact that the other one over exceeded our expectations. So I think we need to really be conscientious of having the heart to do that for everybody, but also being financially accountable to the people paying for it, that we are providing the service that is truly the most effective.
Well, that'll take some data, a good data program. Dan, you had your hand up. Did you have something you wanted to say?
Yeah, I just wanted to have you clarify your ask just a little bit more precisely.
My ask was to have this discussion really and see whether I wanted to hear from people, see if there was interest in IPRTF taking on this as Project 9 as something that we wanted to work on in the next year or so.
Okay.
And so what I'm hearing is helpful and something that perhaps I will write up a proposal and we can have a discussion in March about it.
Okay. Yeah, can I follow up real quick?
Absolutely.
So we're in uncharted territory right now when it comes to the gutting of potential funding for Medicaid at this point. And we have programs that are at risk that are, and we've seen it. If you read the paper, if you've read the Seattle Times or the New York Times, you've seen the accounts of programs in different communities locally in Washington State programs that just cannot, they're not going to take the risk. Agencies that will not take the risk of like setting up shop or continuing operations. And I think that that needs to be part of the discussion when it comes to, you know, if we're talking about new programs or existing programs, what is that going to look like given the uncertainty of the playing field at this point? And I hate to be like a, you know, a person that's like bringing forward like negative news, but that's where we're at right now. We're in week 3 right now of this new administration that has decided to gut programs, and there's not really much in the way of stopping that. So I just want to be like fully cognizant of, you know, if we're trying to, and we're trying to set up a 23-hour care facility, we're trying to set up a behavioral care center in concurrency with the jail facility. What does that look like when it comes to risk and risk management? And are there other sources of funding that we can look to? So that's, I don't know. I just feel like we need to have that discussion, and we're not talking about that. We're just kind of like,
Dan, I think you left the IPRTF meeting a little bit early, and this is actually the 23-hour work group is very much on this topic. That is why Kayla asked us to have a work group on that subject.
Okay, that's great. That's great.
Because of that funding model, as you and Steve and I were talking about, what is it? Is it in Bellevue and Linwood? And they're not finding providers. They have beautiful new facilities, no providers. And you know, we're planning one of these. That's really the subject of, to a great degree, of that work group.
Okay, that's great to hear. I'm glad that conversation is happening. And the reason I had to leave early and the mayor had to leave early was because we had city council meeting.
I hear you.
But Peter, just if I could intervene, and I apologize to Raylene, Dan's point is a bigger one than just the 23-hour center. It is the availability for funding for any operational program that serves on a treatment level. So if you're talking about what other facilities do we need, that's why I made my comment, and I think Dan is echoing that from a slightly different angle. But just the uncertainty and the unpredictability of that just seems to me the sort of the front of our face kind of issue that we need to figure out.
No argument there. Raylene.
Thank you, and sorry for stepping away a few minutes earlier. You know, discussing on this as we're looking at treatment and treatment providers and kind of piggybacking off of what Sat Paul was saying earlier, I think we have to back it up and look at what treatment works. And that's where the data comes in that Tasha was talking about, because I remember asking a question probably years ago in one of these meetings about what Suboxone and methadone treat. And they were saying, well, it treats heroin. So it doesn't treat fentanyl users. It doesn't treat methamphetamines. What treatment programs are actually working and assisting individuals that have those problems? You know, we had Sam Quinones in Whatcom County. I want to say it was last year or maybe 2 years ago.
Summer of 2023.
2023. See, time flies. Discussing different programs, different treatments, what works, what doesn't work. And if we're looking at a facility, we don't know if we have providers. We don't know if we're going to have the funding. And then we also need to make sure if we're going to provide treatment, what is it going to treat, and what is our biggest population of individuals that need the treatment? I mean, because I know we have a drug problem. There's no question there. It's what are we actually going to be able to accomplish? And those are the first questions I would look at, because if If you don't have providers and you don't have treatment that's gonna work, then maybe we need to put our time, energy, and money somewhere else.
So Peter, was that a wrap on your things for upcoming meetings? Or did you have
One
any more?
last small item
Last
and
thing?
it's
Okay.
for April. Oh, and I just want to recognize, Raylene, what you said. In all of this, my concern is that we have good planning and that it is that we do have a continuum of care and know where our gaps in the continuum is so that we can plan plan appropriately, and that we have the data to show what is working, what's not, so we know how to apply the resources that we have. So
Thank you, Peter. I just want to follow up. I'm not against treatment. I want people to have help. I just want to make sure we're able to do it successfully.
absolutely. The last item, Barry, was an idea for April's meeting, and I believe by April's meeting, Village Reach will have completed their report. And it'd be great to get a presentation at that time to the full IPRTF, so that we could all weigh in on what it is that they came up with. So we don't have, there's no action required there. I just wanted to put that out there. So that's all I had, Barry.
Sounds pretty lively. Like, so we got a lot of stuff to talk about in the coming months.
Yes, we do.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah.
Anybody have any other business for the steering committee? Tasha?
I just touching base back on when we speak about money, and I don't know if Maya can talk about it, where we are with the defense attorneys and their caseload and the court.
Yeah, the Supreme Court meets en banc to discuss the standards on February 26th. So coming up, it is totally unknown whether they're gonna proceed with like giving a pronouncement about their decision or whether it's literally them meeting to further discuss and we're gonna be given another bump. We've seen a few jurisdictions around the state, a few defense offices that are adopting the standards even without the Supreme Court decision. In King County, for instance, there's big advertisements in the Washington and Oregon Bar News soliciting attorneys to come work for them. Come be the defender you wanted to be. We're doing the caseloads now and we're paying more, and they are paying more and doing the caseloads. So we'll have to contend with that. There's legislation that's out there that would consider the state funding, you know, a large part of defense expenses, but it's hard. It's like, are we in a chicken and the egg situation where legislators waiting for the Supreme Court's waiting for the legislature? It's kind of hard to see who's going to crack first. Someone's going to have to go. Someone's going to have to take some action. Unclear as yet. Thanks for asking.
Thanks, Maya. Dan?
Yeah, I just wanted to chime in real quick. There are a number of co-responder bills that are going through the process in Olympia. And the so Vanessa Martin reached out and asked if the city would consider, you know, testifying and supporting these bills. We're in the process of looking at those, but I just wanted to get that out there in front of this committee that we're looking at those items.
Do you have the bill numbers in front of you?
I'm trying to look them up right now. I'm on my phone, which is basically impossible to do any work on, but I'll get them to Jill and she can get those out to the group.
All right, any other business? We can move to public comment. Richard, did you want to make any kind of comments? Thanks for being here today.
No problem. I don't necessarily know if I have any comment other than I like the what Sag Paul had said about you know, making the fewer programs succeed versus a wide blanket. people are only going to get help if they want it. You know what I mean? I don't know.
Well, it's great to have you here with us. Jill, is there anyone in the conference room or online that would like to speak to the steering committee?
We do not have any attendees today.
Okay, great session, everybody. I will get that email out to you, Peter, right away, because I think there's a lot of players that are going to be missing at that 24th
Okay.
meeting. So I'll
Okay.
get that to you now.
Barry,
Alright.
can you copy me on that email as well?
I absolutely have that written down. You and Heather. Yep. All right, folks, we are adjourned.